Tonight's guest. Tonight's guest and I met for the first time 20 years ago. He was our very first guest on Sundays at 7 in January 2004. It seems incredible. We were talking about this before, that we've been going for 20 years. And people are so faithful to this event. You come along, you receive, you go away, you watch the recording of it and so on. You invite other people to come along. And it's been one of our major evangelistic evenings. And I hope you will receive a lot tonight, and I know you will. Tonight's guest is the founder of the Message Trust. Most of you will have heard of him. You'd have heard of the work that they've done. But since I met him 20 years ago to now, it's expanded and expanded and expanded. So there's a lot for him to tell us about and a lot for him to talk about in general, where we are today. So ladies and gentlemen, please give a really warm welcome to Andy Hawthorne.
David, hi everyone.
Hi Andy, are you okay?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Good. Right. Welcome back to St Mary's, 20 years later. Thank you for taking the time to come back and share with us again. Over the last 20 years, your ministry has grown and developed, as has all the work you've been involved with. If I may, I'd like to divide the interview into two sections. The first section about how it all started and an example of your vision through the recent grocery store project, along with one or two video clips of how things have developed since then. So, the Lord fully entered into your life at the age of 17. Now that's important to talk about for the benefit of younger people here, or young adults. I know this involved your brother. What actually happened? Your mum, your dad, the concert age 12, the next 5 years, your brother Simon, and the book. Share with us.
Yes, well, when I was 3 years old in South Manchester, my mum became a Christian, along with half the women on our street. There's a lady called Olive Clark who was this crazy evangelist, and she set up Young Wives Bible Studies. It sounds cool, doesn't it? And at these Young Wives Bible Studies, all these ladies became Christians, and then shortly after, their husbands came in kicking and screaming. So I was made to go to church from being a young man, an Anglican church. I found it quite boring. All Anglican churches aren't boring. This one was a little bit, certainly for me. And so as soon as I had a choice to stop going, when I was about 10 or 11, I stopped going. Then I went to a concert. I didn't really know, it was just a secular youth club, but there was a band playing, and I knew something was funny because they were called The Sheep, which is a terrible name for a Christian band. But at age 12, I thought they were kind of cool, and they were ex-junkies, they were called Jesus people from California, and they preached the gospel. And probably age 12, that was the first time I'd ever heard it in language I could understand and relate to. And when the guy at the front said, "Do you want to give your life to Jesus? Come down the front," I was first down there and prayed with this American evangelist. And I think I meant it, but I certainly didn't live like it for the next few years. I flirted with church and probably would have never known I was a Christian. All the way through this, you know, my mum's journey in praying, Olive Clark's praying, and every Christmas she would buy myself and my two brothers, Michael and Simon, a Christian book, which is a good thing to do. She'd buy us all the things we wanted, the Manchester United kits and the CDs or whatever it was, but she'd always buy us the Christian book and always write something in the front. And I'm sure she prayed over this book. We ignored them, left them unread on our bookshelf. So when I'm 17 and my brother Simon's 19, and I was a rebel at 17, he was a lot worse. He was on drugs and in trouble with the police and everything. Simon started going out with a girl. You have to track with this, follow me on this. Simon started going out with a girl called Leslie. And Leslie had a cousin in Blackpool. And she went over to Blackpool, 50 miles away, to visit this cousin. And they wandered into a second-hand bookshop. And Leslie's cousin said to her, "You see that book there?" It wasn't a Christian bookshop, just a regular bookshop. He said, "See that book there? that Arthur Blessed fella, he's been in our school, and I think I might buy you that book, see what you think. And it was called Turned On to Jesus. So Leslie's cousin bought her this book, and Leslie read it and was impressed enough to give it to her boyfriend, my brother. And Simon opened this book, was like, "You're as bad as my mum. Are you trying to convert me now, Leslie?" And on the inside flap it said, "To Simon, with love from Mum, Christmas 1974. I hope this book means something to your son." So that was a book that my mum had bought for Simon 5 years previous. And we don't actually know how it got off our bookshelf in South Manchester, 50 miles away, into the second-hand bookshop, into his girlfriend's hands and back round to him. Apart from these women were praying and God was on the move. And when Simon read that book, he was like, this is true. He really believed it. And he prayed a little prayer that was at the back of the book. And he phoned me up and said, "Andy, I've become a Christian." And Al Ward, where's the Reverend Al Ward? He's here somewhere. And there he is. So Al Ward is a vicar here in Wallasey. Remembers the day myself and Simon rocked up at St. Mary's Cheadle Church. And I was dragged in by Simon that following Sunday. And Simon had purple hair and was a punk rocker. And I was rough as anything. But I could see something had happened in my brother's life. And over the next few months, I went to church every Sunday, but partying and acting like an idiot the rest of the week. And then 6 months in, Simon gave his testimony in church. He stood up in front of St. Mary's Cheadle, told the story of the book. I mean, he was properly on fire by now. And I knew it was true. And I went home and prayed in my bedroom floor, just, "Jesus, come into my life. I'm so sorry. I've not lived the way I should." Fully surrendered everything to Christ. So right back then is when I reckon God gave me something at the heart of the evangelist. Not the best evangelist, but that's what really gets me going, telling other people about Jesus. And so from that moment, I was like on it. Me and Simon telling everybody we possibly could.
I just think that's powerful.
And it's powerful for mothers who are here, maybe with rebellious kids or whatever, the power of a mother's prayers, yeah.
Yeah. That was in 1977.
Yeah.
How did that lead to the vision that God ultimately gave you to have a concern for young people?
Well, from that moment, I wanted to go into full-time Christian ministry. I looked in all kinds of ministries, but nobody seemed to want to have me. Probably because I only had one O-level in woodwork. I was such a clown at school. I went to a good grammar school, but completely rebelled and blew all my exams. And so nobody seemed to want to give me a job in Christian work. And so I set up a business with my brother, a fashion business. We used to make fashion accessories and jackets. And back in the 80s, rave music was massive in Manchester. So we did really well making all this cool rave clothing. And we had a surge in turnover. In fact, our theory is, actually, we were doing all this rave stuff. Then we started to do braces for ladies, fashion braces. Remember when they were in Fashion Girls? Some of you are old enough to remember that. And Lady Diana wore a pair of our braces. And the next day, like every girl in Britain wanted them. And we had orders for millions of pairs of these braces. And so the business was growing and growing and growing. And we bought a factory in inner city Manchester, a place called Longsight. And not for any good reason, apart from that's where we got the best grants. But we employed lots of local tearaways. And it was really their broken lives, I think, that stirred myself and my brother Simon to want to do something to reach the hardest to reach. I've got this little theory, David, that I think every Christian needs 2 conversions. They need the big one that I had as a teenager, which is the one that makes sure you go to heaven and you know God's power in your life to get you there. And live a life worth living, honouring Jesus. But you need the second conversion. There's conversion to the poor and the broken and the marginalised. God really wants to do that work. And I think as we connected with all these families and all these kids we were employing, our hearts were a bit broken about their messy lives. And so that was how we started doing ministry originally out of our business. And some of these old fellas who were in the band were actually singing with us back then. Can you believe that? Discovered today.
We'll not go there. Andy, you've never really been involved in small projects. They're usually big events like missions to thousands of youngsters. How do you inspire other people to get on board with your ideas? Even the financial side of things must be an issue. Is it all down to trust and belief? How does it pan out?
Yeah. Well, I was a few weeks ago speaking at a massive church in Peterborough, Kingsgate Church, which is thousands and thousands. Started with 7 guys in a living room. And the pastor there, Dave Smith, said to me, we started with 7 guys in a living room, but our strap line was, think big or you'll limit me. And I think there's something about that. You know, God wants us. I think healthy things grow. Sometimes they're pruning for growth, but healthy things grow, and there is an irresistible currency of heaven. It's called faith. You know, back in what we were thinking of in 1988, thinking me and my brother could organise Manchester's biggest ever youth mission. But God loved the heart, and we didn't have the skills, we didn't have the expertise, we just had a passion. And actually, the good news about that is it is the passionate people who change the world. And in Christian terms, it's the faith-filled people, the people who are prepared to step out. So it has been a faith journey from start to finish, the message. And you're right, the finances have been a right pain over the years. But wow, the breakthroughs we've seen, the miracles we've seen. It started off, I think our first year as the Message Trust was about £50,000 turnover. Now it's well over £12 million just in the UK, and plus we work all over the world. And it's mad the way that money comes in.
That's just amazing. It really is. But I think it's important to share that aspect of it. I know you've been involved in many outreach events through the message, but you've always been aware of what was going on around you. And in 2020, following the first lockdown, the Message Trust pioneered a community grocery store project near Wythenshawe, giving those who were finding it hard to keep their families fed access to affordable food. I'm just going to show now 2 short clips. The first one actually is a piece where your son is present, and then onto that we're going to see Christine's story, and then I'd like you to tell me about the project. Let's watch the 2 clips now.
I'm on the site of our first community grocery, which we launched in September 2020. We had no idea that it would have such an impact on this beautiful community here in Wythenshawe. We already have here at this grocery almost 2,000 members, and literally hundreds of people have given their life to Christ. And so we've aggressively, if you like, rolled community groceries the length and breadth of the UK. By the end of 2022, we want to see 38 groceries in our most deprived neighbourhoods, all in partnership with local church.
So isolated and alone and helpless, and at the time I didn't have any money for food. I just felt when I came here, felt welcomed, felt accepted, felt like no one was judging me.
Membership is £5 and then residents can come and shop for £3 each time. A shop includes about 20 items, which is a mix of fruit and veg, shelf items, fridge items, freezer items and a non-food item as well.
We're able to provide a great service because we partner with Aldi, with Tesco's, with Co-op, we work with Fair Share, In-Kind Direct, and that's just to name a few. We have our members coming in on a weekly basis who say that they are not only blown away by the fresh produce that they receive, but also by the level of care that they receive from our staff and volunteers here.
We got the leaflets and we thought, well, we'll come and see what it's all about. And really, in one respect, it was the best thing that we did because we've met such nice people. And when you come here, it's like a weight's been lifted and you feel better. And we always pray when we're here before we go home. And you just feel lighter and brighter.
Alongside the £3 shop each week that members have access to, it's also great to be able to offer different courses and groups that are running as part of the church. We have cookery classes, we have dance classes for children, there's also money management courses, and of course exploring Christianity, whether that be through Alpha or 4 Points course. We're able to help members explore Christianity, which a lot of members have signed up for.
I first heard about the community grocery last year after my husband walked out and left me. I had to make a claim to Universal Credit. Having no money, I was worried about how I was going to feed myself and my son, and they pointed me in the direction of the grocery. The first time I walked in, I was very apprehensive, didn't know what to expect, but they put me at ease straight away and signed me up. They were very, very sincere, very helpful. The range of food was more than I expected. The fruit and veg to me was absolutely life-saving because that's very expensive to buy. Plenty of tinned staples, tomatoes, beans, peas. You find all sorts of different things. You can try them without paying a fortune. My mental health, I've always suffered with depression from being very young, and as you can imagine, with my husband leaving, I was in a really, really bad way, and I thought maybe volunteering would get me out of the house, it would give me purpose. So I put my name down for volunteering a couple of times a week. That has been life-changing, and it's actually not like work. It's more like going to a friend's, having a brew and helping them do things. I noticed that the people that worked in the grocery, the volunteers and the manager, and they were always happy, always positive, very upbeat, and I actually thought, do you know what, I wouldn't mind some of that myself. I've always believed in God. From being very young, I went to church with my mum, but then my granddad died and I fell out with God. Still believed in him, but fell out with him. So I've been lapsed for quite a while. When I came to the grocery and I saw how happy and positive and people were, they mentioned the church, and I thought, yeah, I'll try this. So I went one Sunday. Felt a bit strange, but also comforting. Lately, I've started going more and more. I've just done the Alpha course, which I really enjoyed, finding out about Christianity, and not been baptised yet, but I'm on a journey to get there. Through joining the church, life's got better. I'm more positive, I smile a lot more, but I just feel so much happier, and like I said, I've always believed in God, and this has helped bring me back.
How did that come about?
Well, it came about, I guess, if we fast forward from me being in the business, then I left the business, downscaled my lifestyle in 1992 and set up the charity as a one-man band, and we grew it and grew it. Initially, we just had a funny music group called the Worldwide Message Tribe that used to go into schools, thought I could rap for Jesus, and then we formed other bands, and then we started to doing a city project called Eden Projects, where we've moved something like 850 people to live long-term in deprived neighbourhoods, and lots more programs, prisons work, businesses to provide jobs for ex-offenders, big events, all that stuff. So we're growing the work. So by 2020, we'd have perhaps 150 staff and thousands of volunteers and all sorts of programs. And then, like everyone else, life stopped on March the 23rd. And, none of our events could happen. All our businesses closed, or they couldn't go in schools or prisons. And we were like, for a couple of days, like rabbit in the headlights. And then we realized we've got some catering kitchens where we employ ex-offenders. So let's start delivering food. We just mobilized the whole staff to go out, delivering tens of thousands of food. We got a list of all the free school meals families, because in the inner city, in Manchester particularly, it was terrible. These mums have suddenly got all the kids back with them, driving them insane, single mums. They've not sorted out what to do with the benefits, and they've not got free school meals. So we would deliver food for the first couple of weeks of COVID. And then we went over to visit a project in Wigan who had given us some food to prepare all this food to deliver out to the families. And there was a big queue down the street in Wigan. And it was like rather than us just going out into the community delivering food, it was a pantry where people could come and spend £3, and for the £3 get lots of food. And I went with my son, and Sam said, we could do that, Dad. we could literally do that. We've got a space. That's one thing you can do, open a food store in COVID. So why don't we repurpose that for, except we could add Alpha and Christianity, Christians Against Poverty courses, and fully share our Christian faith with people who are really struggling at the moment. So within about a month, we had our first community grocery launch in Wythenshawe. And I remember that knot in my stomach on the first day, because we'd all worked really hard to kit the thing out, scrambled around to get the shelves filled. Is it going to work? And sure enough, we had the same experience. 100 people queuing on the day it opened, and it continued. And now it said 2,000. We've got 5,000 members in our Wythenshawe grocery and 55,000 members around the country. We've seen thousands of people come to Christ. It's been
How many stores have you got?
We've got 22 at the moment. Another 6 about to launch. And then we've got 20 vans doing the length and breadth of the country, 2 distribution centres, and it's been an incredible journey.
Do you get support from the supermarkets, do you?
Well, when we first started, I thought, at last, we've got something we're not going to have to fundraise for here, because there was loads of money. The government were giving loads of money, particularly through DEFRA, for food insecurity. The supermarkets were donating loads of food. There was just food in the system, and the £3 was paying the bills, because we're doing thousands of shops. And we were only having to buy about 5%. Then, of course, all the government funding stopped at the end of COVID. The supermarkets stopped being as generous. Food inflation hit 20%. We'd budgeted by now to be on 30,000 members. We're on 55,000 members suddenly. And it's a big old operation. After the Trussell Trust, we're now the second largest Christian food distribution charity. So it's like suddenly we've got to find millions of pounds. And guess what? God's been incredible and provided the money so we can fill those shelves. And if you go in a community grocery, I hope you got a little flavour. It's an amazing space. It feels like a farm shop. There's fantastic produce that these families can access, and they choose it. There's a dignity with them choosing the right food. And of course, Michelle's here, my wife. She does healthy cooking classes. We do all sorts of stuff around mental health and debt. And thousands have come to Christ to Alpha courses across the community groceries. It's been an amazing thing. And you didn't see Sam. You said we're going to see my son.
He was on the original bit.
Okay. My son's been the real kind of visionary pioneer. Sam, I said about that second conversion thing. When he was 18, I took him out to Haiti with Michelle, and he saw the poorest of the poor. And I'll never forget him going back to university and broken by this. And suddenly, there were pictures of slightly scantily clad women on his wall that I wasn't that impressed with. They came down, and instead of that, there was all these pictures of compassion kids. And, God broke his heart, and he fully surrendered his life to Christ. I remember him coming back from Haiti saying, Dad, it's time. I want to fully give my life to Christ. I want to get baptized as soon as possible. And so he's got that going on. He had his second conversion, Sam. But he's also a business entrepreneur, which is cool.
This leads beautifully onto a couple of questions before the end of the first half. In a recent interview, you were asked about the mental health of young people today. And you shared how distressing it is to see teenagers with no hope. As you put it, beautiful youngsters with real problems. What are you seeing in our society today, and how can we address the issue? And linked with this, you also started a project which is No More Knives, because that's one of the major issues as well.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Well, you're absolutely right, David. There's a far scarier pandemic in our society. It's the mental health pandemic, especially amongst young people. 30 years ago, the people who suffered the worst mental health were mainly older people who had financial pressure and marriage pressure and work pressure. The people who are now, the main people who are suffering mental health crises are young people. I was at a little prayer meeting last Wednesday, and we go around, in our office. We all pray together every day, and then once a week we pray in our little teams. My little team, this lady said, would you pray for this friend of mine, 7-year-old boy who's suicidal, he's having a mental health crisis. And what's screwing this young man's brain up is his mobile phone. He's 7 years old, but he's on Snapchat. He maybe can't have access to, disgusting pornography that teenagers have access to, or some of the really dangerous stuff. but he's on these little Snapchat groups, these little groups where they're basically bumping each other off or putting each other down, and it's destroying the mental health. Forget our teenagers, our little ones now. So it is a terrifying thing that's going on our watch. And what's the answer? The answer is Jesus Christ. The only hope is the hope that comes with the gospel. Somebody's got to go out and offer young people a better way than that, haven't they? I mean, we face so much self-harm, so much suicide. It should break our hearts and stir us to pray as a church and stir us to action. We need to see a move of God. And I'm holding on to the promises, and we're seeing some great things happen. But we also need some wisdom about what to do. Hence going into schools with this No More Knives tour, which we go into schools with former gangsters who are knife criminals, and they'll lift up the shirts and show the kids, you know, the scars that these men, and they'll show videos of their mates who are in wheelchairs after, and show videos of mums weeping over the sons that have been murdered in knife crime. It's so powerful. And then at the end of the lesson or the day, we have a knife amnesty. The police come in and they can bring the knives in. And we've seen hundreds and hundreds of weapons handed in. But then at the end of each week, No More Knives, with these crazy bands that are performing music, we then do a gospel service. So we don't just say, lay down your weapons.
It doesn't end there.
We say, take up the cross, follow the Prince of Peace. And it's so powerful. And we really feel we've hit on something. So we have a whole, this year we'll be visiting hundreds of schools with this No More Knives message.
Andy, when you arrived before, you set up a stand over on the far side. Can you tell us what's on the stand?
Yes, obviously, wherever I go, I'm desperate to recruit more people. We ain't going to do this on our own. People who will pray, people who may even consider volunteering, and people who will give towards the message. And as the work grows, both here in the UK and we'll perhaps come to this, it's growing crazily around the world. We need all the help we can get. So there's lots of literature about the things we've talked about, the grocery and other ministries we're involved in. There's a mailing list. If you put your name on that mailing list, you will receive once a quarter the brochure that's dotted around the room, flow with some inspirational stories that will build your faith, what God's doing. And there's also these packs, which David kindly said I could mention, which are our partner packs. The people, I remember hearing you mentioned Billy Graham. He mentioned Billy Graham. Billy Graham was once at a John Paul Getty, you know, the billionaire, say, why'd you do all this fundraising, Billy? Why'd you keep asking people to support you? Let me underwrite the whole ministry. I'm a billionaire. You can just get on with preaching the gospel. And Billy Graham, to his eternal credit, said, I can't take your money. He said, because I need people who will give $5, $10, $25, $50 a month, because they're my prayer support. And I don't want one guy, supporting this thing. I want thousands of people. So wherever I go, I ask people, could you, if you're able, support the message with a regular gift, any amount, and become a partner? And if you do that, you get this incredible pack of goodies, which is a partner pack, and it includes my latest book, which may not be the best book you've ever read, but it's the best book I've written. That may not be saying much. It's called A Burning Heart. It's a special hardback edition, but you'll get this book as well. Being the Message, which is the values and the vision of the message how we've grown this thing over the last 30 years. You get this book, which is Advance. You're going to hear about Advance. Once we've talked about Advance, you're going to want this. And you get this book, believe it or not, No Plan B by my friend. An amazing book about keeping the gospel central in everything. It's only the gospel that's going to change. And one more. You get this one. My friend Matthew Kinton Smith, who was like an Oxford Blue rower, and then fell off his bike, had a cardiac arrest, and went into a coma and came out of that coma. He should have died, came out of that coma, a changed man. He got a second chance to build his life. It's an inspirational book. And the best thing you'll get is a little card. In here is a little card, and which gives you access to the top 100 talks from the message. You'll get a few from me, but also we've had people like George Verver and Louis Palau and Danielle Strickland pass through, and they've done amazing stuff. So you can, and even if you don't know how to work the codes in your computer, your kids will tell you how to do it, and it's life-changing stuff. So it's a kind of to encourage people, and you will also get, which you might not appreciate, a CD from one of our noisy bands. If you don't like it, your grandkids will. And so you get all these resources just to say thank you for a partnership gift, a regular gift of any amount.
So you, at the end, if you will be over by the stand over there, and then you talk
Yeah.
to people about what's there.
I'll be there. Elliot Mitchell's just turned up, I believe, with a tripwire by the door. Michelle's there, my wife, as well. So we'd love to have a chat with you. Please, even if you can't do a regular gift, please fill in the prayer. We would treasure that. Thank you.
Andy, just an additional question that's not even down here. In 20 years, I have met some amazing people with amazing stories who've explained how God has worked in their lives. And I've often said to them, with what you have seen, some awful situations, has your faith ever been tested to the limit? Can you relate to that? Yeah. And you might say, yeah, every day. But sometimes there are moments when you think, do you know what? This is really tough to cope with.
Yeah, well, yes, clearly. You don't do this for as long as, and some of that's been financial pressure, some of that's been colleagues who've completely lost the plot and fallen away from the Lord and got into all sorts of nonsense. I remember one time being in Bangkok on the way back from a ministry trip to Australia, and we dropped into Bangkok. Some friends arranged for us to stay in a hotel they were involved with. Went to this beautiful hotel, went out for dinner. Everything in the world was great. Get back from a great ministry trip, and Michelle went to the ladies, and there was all this commotion, and she either had a fall, some freak accident, and in Bangkok, Michelle, I thought my wife was dying. There was blood coming out of her ears and her nose. She had bleeding on the brain. She was there was a doctor in the restaurant said, whatever you do, don't wait for an ambulance in Bangkok. Get her in an ambulance now. So I kind of carried my wife into this ambulance. She was writhing around. Took us to this, what seemed to be a very scruffy hospital in Bangkok. And Michelle was absolutely out of her mind. I thought she was dying on the table in front of me. And there was 10 days where she didn't know who I was. She didn't know where. Well, she just about knew who I was, but she was talking utter nonsense. And I'm resolving myself to being a carer for the rest of my life. In Bangkok, unbelievably isolated. You know, none of the normal support thing, just me and Michelle. And that was terrifying. And yeah, I wrote a journal over those long hours, sat by Michelle's side in the Bangkok hospital. And I read back, and it's amazing how God stepped in repeatedly. The times God spared Michelle's life, the time God brought Christians alongside me, the time he gave me strength in what felt like a tremendous trial. And that she came back, and she is, if you meet her tonight, in her right mind and still going on for Jesus and still around, even though since then she's had stage 4 cancer as well. So we've been through stuff. You know, Christianity isn't a way out of life's trials. Yeah. It's a way through. It's a power to get through. Yeah. And I don't know if it wasn't for Jesus, how we would have coped and how we would have got through those things. So yes, undoubtedly, everybody in this church, we are either coming out of a trial, in the midst of a trial, or about to hit a trial. Hallelujah.
Wow.
But with that trial comes power. He will not test you beyond what you can bear.
That was a good supplementary question, wasn't it?
I was expecting that, so anyway, there you go.
Yeah. Can I ask you, similar to that, have you prioritised family time? Because you're a busy guy, you do all kinds of things all over the world and everything else, wonderful ministry, but the family, do you give plenty of time to that, or is that difficult?
Well, again, you need to ask Michelle.
I did.
Oh, what did she say?
She said you did.
Yes, good. But I'll tell you what she probably didn't say, which is also worth saying, that at the start of the Message Trust, I don't think I did. And in fact, I remember, I mentioned I was in this band. We called it the Worldwide Message Tribe, and we actually got popular all over the world, and it was great fun. And we were seeing thousands of people come to Christ, and I was living the dream, and I was like doing schools work all week, then charging off around these festivals every weekend, and working 7 days a week, loving life. And I said to Michelle because we had 2 little children then, and I said to Michelle, wasn't it amazing? Like 5 years ago when the tribe started, it all blew up. And Michelle said, no, it was horrible. And there was a couple of times when I wanted to leave you because you were just charging off on this mission and you were not thinking about life back at home. And I thought I was doing the right thing, and I was actually being an idiot. And that was a moment for me when I'm like, this is not going to happen again. Now I'm going to prioritize family. So I do prioritize family time. And I even, when the global thing started to open up, and we went from just being a ministry that's based in Manchester to all over the UK and now all over the world, I said to my trustees, I'm not even going to do this, all this travel, if A, Michelle's not up for coming with me, and B, we're not going to pay for 2 flights. Well, let's decide. Yeah. Because, and Michelle wants to do it, and with her, work and lifestyle, she can. So I think we've got to a great place, and I think we love each other more after 40 years of marriage than we ever have done, and we're in it together. And Michelle is thoroughly involved now with the message, so, and we've done all right, and we had our granddaughter's dedication today. We've got 2 kids who love Jesus, which is amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's important.
Oh, if you can have all the rest and blow that, and what's it all about?
Absolutely. Over 20 years ago, you had a vision to see Christians moving into different areas to live and work, supporting local churches in trying to reach young people who are often in dire situations. It was called the Eden Project. I was going to just show a video of Emma's story, but I'd rather you talked about it. Tell me about the Eden Project, how it's worked, what it's done, what it's achieved.
Yeah, so when we started, the first 5 years of the Message Trust was just me, and then we started to grow it, Worldwide Message Tribe, and supporting churches in reaching young people in the toughest neighbourhoods. 1997, we did 2 weeks in a place called Bench Hill, Wythenshawe, which is then the most deprived ward in Britain now, 34,000 wards. Very dangerous, gang-ridden place, lots of drugs, prostitution, all that stuff, and a couple of schools there that were like in super special measures. The police wouldn't let us do the concert in the schools, so we booked a local hall, and 700 of the toughest kids you've ever seen turned up. And when I preached the gospel, sometimes it would be absolute chaos, but this time there was a real hush and a sense of God's presence, and 100 of those teenagers gave their life to Christ. What was even more amazing is they all turned up at the local church on the Sunday, and this little church of 20 people suddenly had 100 Wythenshawe teenagers, the roughest, toughest, wild animals, as it says in the scriptures, that were made to honour me. And so we were like, how the heck can this little church cope with this many people? And so pragmatically, we came up with the idea of moving people into that neighbourhood. It was just for Bench Hill to start with. An amazing thing happened. So we were a little bit scared about this idea. We knew what Wythenshawe was like. There were rows and rows of boarded up houses. We thought if we could move a couple of dozen young adults in to really follow up these kids and be rooted in the community. We had this band that was shouting loud, lamp on a stand, gospel, but what about the salt and yeast, the people loving and serving anonymously, long term? And so we came up with this vision. The first time I ever spoke publicly about it, there was a leaders fraternal in Manchester, and I said, we've got this idea, about the Worldwide Message Tribe and evangelists, but we want to disciple these kids who are coming to Christ in the toughest neighbourhood. Would you encourage some of your young adults to move in as part of this team, and would you please give us some money, guess what, to help us do it? And they said they would, and they were as good as the word. First time ever spoken. So about 10 minutes later, myself and my brother Simon were sat in his car in a car park in Manchester, and a guy came up. We just sat there chatting about the meeting, who'd been sat on a bench eating his sandwiches. He came up and knocked on the car window, and we wound the window down, and he said, excuse me lads, I don't know if you understand this kind of thing, but I'm a Christian, I've been reading my Bible, and I feel compelled to read these verses to you. And my brother said, you better get in the back then, mate. So he climbed in the back of the car, and we've since found he's a missionary, YWAM missionary, prays 3 hours a day, and hears the Lord. And he read Psalm 37. He said, I've been reading these verses, and I wonder if it might mean something to you. And it was Psalm 37, 5 to 11. It says, commit your way to the Lord, trust in me, and I'll do this. The righteousness of your cause will shine like the noonday sun. Goes on to say, be still and don't fret, even when men succeed in their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger, turn from wrath, because the meek will inherit the land and enjoy great peace. I honestly believe that was God speaking to me and my brother about Eden, that it's a righteous cause. You know, when Christians get serious about the poor, you can't get much more serious than be downwardly mobile, can you? And move out of a nice neighbourhood into a tough neighbourhood, uproot your whole lifestyle. It's okay filling out a form, that's great, and giving a few quid a month, but what about giving your whole life? And so we believe that's a righteous cause. And we even believe the promises, we're going to see what it's like to inherit a land for Jesus. And the amazing thing is, where that first Eden team is, where we're seeing so many people come to Christ 27 years later through the grocery. Literally over 1,000 people have made decisions for Christ in that surrounding neighbourhood around that very first Eden team. And since then, 850 more people have moved into 82 teams all over the country.
This is all about supporting people where they are.
Yeah.
And helping them again and again and again.
Yeah.
In other words, you're winning them over by sharing, aren't you? And helping them where they are, and not right away where you'd like them to be. You help them where they are, and then it's where you'd like them to be.
Exactly, going to where they're at. It's fascinating, isn't it, when you see, Acts is meant to be our model church, but Acts is a church that loved the poor. They even had daily feeding. Read it in Acts chapter 6. The daily distribution of food to the poor. That was at the heart. And I remember preaching on that passage in 2019 and saying, imagine a church that didn't just have a food bank, but was daily distributing food to the poor. And it's amazing that we can be partnering loads of churches that are doing that now.
In your travels, you must have seen many churches that are run by wonderful people who are getting older and older. How can we inspire younger people to come to church and, more importantly, get involved? Or are those days gone? In other words, have things changed so much? We have a church here, and we have a wonderful building next door, which we use fantastically for not just the church, but the community. But getting young people to come to things is not easy.
Well, definitely God hasn't finished with young people. I mean, we are seeing, we partner with churches that have literally thousands of young people as part of their thing. What I would say, and I've got to be careful here, but a sure sign of madness is to keep doing the same thing and expect to get different results. So, and if Coca-Cola found that the people drinking their drink were getting older and older and older, and sure enough, in the next 30 years, there's going to be nobody left, they would radically change their design and their marketing and their planning, wouldn't they? If we are seeing that in the church, if we've got a church that's full of beautiful but older people, and we can't attract young people, we better do something different. We better pray, seek the Lord, because there is a generation of young people who are hungry. Young people are hungry. There is a mental health crisis, and we've got the only one who can bring true peace. And there's a desperate lack of hope. When people walk into our Eden projects or our groceries, or even our lessons about knife crime, they can sniff hope. And then we tell them hope has a name. And what's his name? And Jesus is exactly what every young person needs. So we better try some new stuff. We better seek the Lord. And the very first verse that God gave me that night, way back, when we decided we were going to try and organise Manchester's biggest ever youth mission, was my set reading for the day. I'm like, as if you could do this. Please, God speaks to me through the Bible. And my set reading was, see, I'm doing a new thing. Do you not perceive it? There'll be rivers in the desert, streams in the wasteland. God is definitely doing a new thing. Not just in inner city Manchester, but in Upton, he's doing a new thing. Our key thing is to perceive what he's doing and throw our weight behind what he's doing. And believe that rivers of life can flow in schools and prisons and tough communities, and the young people can genuinely engage with the gospel. So yeah, we have a church at home full of young people. I partner with churches with thousands of young people. Do it here, Lord.
Right.
And that was a bit of a rant, but that was from the heart.
Your latest project is Advance. Tell us about Advance. What is Advance all about, and how far has it grown to this stage now?
Yeah, I mean, I think Advance, you may not have heard of Advance or advanced groups. It's probably the most significant thing we've ever done with a message. What actually happened, how Advance was born, and because I like to think that the message is at its best entrepreneurial. We are a see, I'm doing a new thing. We're plate spinners, we try lots of things, but our things that we try are based around reaching more lost people who don't know Christ and blessing more poor people who desperately need help. So we're constantly thinking, are there new things? Because, see, I'm doing a new thing, says the Lord, so let's try and find these new things. So 8 years ago, we had this amazing Ugandan friend of mine come over, and before he flew over to Manchester, he said, I have a word from the Lord for your team. You need to gather the troops. And so Thursday morning in our warehouse, I gathered all the message people. And John Bunjo said to me, said to all of us, the Lord said, it's quite a simple message actually, Isaiah 60, arise, shine, for your light's come. You're going to see the least become 1,000, the smallest a mighty nation. God's spoken this over the messages. You got open doors. It's a great season of open doors. Get ready for everything to go to the next level. That's what this guy, amazing guy from Uganda who hears the Lord said. And I'm sat on the front row about where you are. And he said, you need to go away and seek the Lord. And I'm like, I've not got much time to seek the Lord at the moment, John. I'm a bit busy. John Bunjo meant like 21 days in the desert seeking the Lord. And I managed to find 2 days in the Lake District. And he thought I'd be fasting. And me and Michelle were having nice food. And I was going off walking in the hills praying. But wow, the Lord did speak. And on the way down, I listened to a CD. I didn't even know what it's about. It was all about Isaiah 60. And then I went back, knelt down in my hotel room on my own, opened my Bible. I was going to read in Romans, and it fell open on Isaiah 60, and God just I felt like unfolded the last, whatever it was, 25 years of the ministry in that time in that hotel in Lake Windermere, and it was amazing. And but what I felt like he said is that when you get back, you need to gather 12 of your most fruitful young evangelists and invest in them, and pray together a lot and wrestle with what kind of gospel do we preach to produce disciples, and be really accountable to each other in terms of lifestyle and spiritual disciplines and how we're treating our wives, etc., etc., the stuff that really counts, but also in terms of how we're doing in terms of personal evangelism. And then I said to those 12 lads, I said, look, if you'll join this, we'll journey together, we'll meet every month, we'll text each other every day on a WhatsApp group, but I'd love you to think you could form a group like this. You could gather some guys around you. And I got a girl, we kept them single sex because we wanted to be like real high accountability going on. And a girl at the message formed her first group as well, a girl called Emma. So we had these 2 groups going on. And within a year, there was about a dozen groups, about 120 people. And we had our first little conference 8 years ago. And Ben Jack, who was one of my groups, was one of our most fruitful evangelists, he started writing some materials to help the group leaders. At about 15 group leaders by this point, and he wrote some materials, and we even gave it a name. Let's call it Advance. And then it started to grow and multiply, and then Lewis Palau Association, we partnered with the great evangelist Lewis Palau, and they contacted us and said, we love these materials Ben's doing, can we translate them into Spanish? Because we think there's people in South America would love this. So we translated some material. They paid for it, translated into Spanish, and then we found out, we've got 2,000 groups in Brazil, and it was going, and then it just grew and exploded, and Lewis Palau and the cells got together. Well, maybe we could start to take on some ambassadors around the world. Anyway, fast forward 8 years, we're working in 96 nations. We've got about 150,000 evangelists being trained in around 15,000 groups, and we know of, through advanced groups, 400,000 people who came to Christ last year. And the really exciting thing, you're holding this global impact report, because we really tried to press in how many, it's okay, lots of people saying they're becoming Christians. How many are going on in the local church being discipled? The answer is, of the people that reported back, of the groups, these thousands of groups, 75% of them are actually going on in Christ in the local church. It's not just like hands in the air in a field.
A one-off.
Yeah, it's which is incredible, because it's personal evangelism, because it's just training and equipping people. So we've given away, I mentioned this advanced group, we've given away thousands. We've now got 3 years materials translated into multiple languages all around the world, and it's just been an amazing, amazing thing. And I mean, we open up new nations weekly. And the vision is, for Advance, to be honest, that by the time I see Jesus face to face, I might not do it, but there will be training evangelists in every nation on earth. That would be because we've got it in some crazy nations you can never imagine.
I mean, I read through this and I thought, I can't believe this. It actually got, you're talking about Advance in Canada, Portugal, Pakistan, Japan, Chad, Brazil, Peru, Cuba, and so on and so on. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And then we discover that the boat people in like Baca Beyond in Uruguay, are doing Advance to reach their community. And then there's these desert dwellers who are doing Advance, and all these reports just from, and it's the Lord. It's impossible that my clever idea, which is not even that clever because it's just the way we're meant to do it, just sharpen and encourage one another. Well, God's breathed on this thing. And so, my vision is, could it be that every nation on earth will be training hundreds of thousands of evangelists, seeing millions won for Christ through Advance? Why not?
Yeah.
Imagine getting to heaven and seeing that lot.
Andy, something that I've wanted to talk to you about. I know you're a great believer and supporter in the Alpha course. Now, we here at St Mary's in about 10 days' time, I think it's on the 16th of April, we're starting the Alpha course, which we've done many times before. Why should people join an Alpha course?
Well, first thing is because it works. It's an amazing, amazing opportunity to, in an unpressurized environment, ask your questions, meet some great people, eat some great food, but also find out, what does the Bible really teach? Who is this Jesus? Who's the Holy Spirit? What about suffering in the world? And so many other questions. The big questions of life, it goes on in an informal way. And I think there's something like 3.5 million people now in the UK done the Alpha course. And God just likes it. And it's one of those things, if you do it, now I'm an Alpha freak, so I help lead a church that's been planted out of a grocery, and every single week we have a daytime Alpha and an evening Alpha, because it works, because it changes people's lives, and it's just a beautiful opportunity with no threat, no pressure to discuss the big things. And just in case it's as good as I say and David and about 2 billion other people around the world, in case it is the difference between living in black and white and living in colour, in fact, just in case it's the only way to get to heaven when you die through Christ, it's worth spending some time. And if at the end of it you say, not for me, at least you've checked it out. But the good thing about Christianity is it's true. And when you look into it, you find out, wow, this is true. And it's not just true, it works. It changes people's lives.
I also think it doesn't mean that because you went on an Alpha course 25, whatever years ago, that you therefore know it all. Sometimes it's worth revisiting, isn't it? To see whether you've grown, whether you've not grown, where you're up to.
I mean, Alpha's a lot further on than Advance, but in some ways it's a similar thing they experience. Because I've met Nicky Gumbel, the guy behind the Alpha course, and they literally started photocopying this little course, Investigating Christianity, because for a few churches in London, and then, wow. I mean, now it's tens of millions of people around the world, and millions have come to Christ through it. So it's amazing. If you haven't done an Alpha course, definitely do it. I don't know, you tell them how to sign up, won't you, David?
Absolutely.
If you have, and it's years ago, do a refresher, yeah.
Andy, 1 hour, as ever, goes like 5 minutes. So, a final question. Message, 30 years on. Where does it go from here? And what would you like us to pray for?
Yeah, well, I think, we called that band the Worldwide Message Tribe just because we thought it was a funny and thought it was a cool name. It probably wasn't very cool. But the name is actually prophetic, and I think we're going global. But I would really covet your prayers for myself and Michelle as we do a lot more global travel, trying to fuel that. We've got lots of travel coming up. But also we've just passed on the UK chief executive role to one of our best guys who still lives on an Eden team in place called Openshaw, a guy called Sam Ward, and we have a fantastic leadership team. So I'm excited about that. I pray we get that transition really, really well. And also, but as we look to replicate what's happening, this church, this scruffy church we've got in Manchester, which is beautiful, we're wondering whether that could be part of a church network born out of groceries in the poorest neighbourhoods, where we see churches grow through salvation growth. Our church has about, we won't get 1,200 on a Sunday, might get 300 on a Sunday, but 1,200 members and 80% brand new Christians from the poorest community. I mean, that's like so exciting if we could see that replicate. So I feel like going global and going local with this local church stuff is what's for me and Michelle for this next season. We would really appreciate your prayers. Pray we behave ourselves and see some wonderful kingdom fruit together.
Andy, 1 hour has gone like 5 minutes, and 20 years has gone like 1 hour. But it was brilliant talking to you 20 years ago, and it's inspiring to listen to you and what God's done in your life and in the life of the message in that time. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you that Michelle has come with you. We really are pleased and thankful that you've come and shared your story with us tonight. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Andy Hawthorne.
Look at that. Thank you so much. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers.
The flowers, I'm afraid, they're not for you.
They're for you.
The flowers are for Michelle.
Thanks. Yes, thank you very much. And you know what? Davey's right. I had hair 20 years ago. I mean, life is going fast, isn't it, people? And only what's done for Jesus lasts. In 100 years' time, all we'll have to show is what we've done for him. And the only thing we'll have taken with us is people we've invested in for him. So please visit our stand. And thanks for listening, and thanks for all your encouragement. And, I always say, when you get asked once, you wonder if you've done a good job. If you get asked back twice, maybe you did okay. It took 20 years, so I've been sulking for 20 years. But at least I've been asked back.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to have a look at the stand before you leave tonight and have a chat with Andy over there. Also, please stay for tea, coffee, which will be served in the atrium where you came in. As usual, stay for a chat.